talking about living fully when life has its limits. So, disabilities, setbacks, and hard lessons included. Be bodacious means you're not going to let life get in the way of living. So, we're going to talk about, like what if your challenges don't stop your story? We're going to talk about what life looks like when you refuse to quit. Hi, my name is Gayle, and welcome to my Be Bodacious channel. I started it because I didn't let life get in the way of living, and I hope you don't either. So for the next about hour, we do this on Sunday nights at 7:30. Woo! And so for about the next hour, we're going to be talking about that because I think all of us have moments where life challenges try to get in our way. And, maybe it's health, maybe it's job loss, maybe it's just dealing with life. But all of those challenges can get in the way and keep us from living the life we're meant to be living. And we're going to talk about that. So if that's your vibe, subscribe to join us. And I want to welcome everyone here. Now, if this is your first time, subscribe. And if you've been here before, welcome back. So what you're going to see behind me sometimes is Sir Fluffy. He is my service dog. He's a Bernese mountain dog who has absolutely no concept of how much space he requires. So he's going to be over here behind me. I'm going to get up and let you all see him. Ta-da! He is laying there on his favorite red towel, and he has already knocked my light off into the floor. Oh, good doggy. What are we going to do with you? I guess we're just going to let you. We're just going to let you. So that's service dog Sir Fluffy. The other service dog you may see in here is service dog Pipsy. Now, he is the one that is in my book series about Pipsy goes to service dog school and service dog Pipsy helps after a hurricane. That is all him. Sir Fluffy is the new kid on the block. We got him in October, and he is part of how I live without limits. So let's talk about how we all have limits, like everybody, okay? We've all got something that sets us apart that is perceived as a limitation, right? We can't all be picked first for the school soccer team, and we can't all be picked first for the spelling bee, the science club, the robotics competition, or even the math competition, because we have different styles, different viewpoints. We approach life coming at it from different everything, really. So if you look at all that, I just kind of want to normalize not being like everybody else, okay? Because that's okay. I want to hear everybody hear me say that it's okay for you not to be like everybody else. And on the physical side, we can have asthma, we can have back problems, broken bones, healed bones, a knee injury. Sometimes we're on crutches. So it's those kinds of things. What's my fixing? Some of us are fixing to lose our hat. So anyway, it's those kinds of things that simply mean, hey, we may not be as good at something as the next person. But let's turn that around, okay? Let's flip it. Sometimes, what on earth? Okay, sorry. Sometimes we are the person that's picked first for that math competition, right? Or picked first for the soccer team and so forth. So what does that look like? What does that mean when that happens? this is a conversation I want to have because sometimes we have a tendency in life to look down on the next person. And so I wanted to kind of normalize it and remind everybody that there are some things that we're going to be better at than others, and some things that we're going to do better than others. And we can learn from that and how we can grow from that and live. Hey, we've got Todd Saw in the house. Hi, Todd. How are you? I hope you're doing really, really well. I saw about your Mississippi pot roast, and that looked really good, by the way. Really good. Sometimes I'm watching videos and I can't access comments on my phone. So bear with me on that. Just another one of those little moments. I think I want to check and see what in the heck my service dog is doing right here behind me. And for those of you who may be returning here, I have a new camera. So let me know. It's got a different angle, a different color combination. Because I realized the more I got to looking at the other camera, the more I realized I just didn't like the way it was picking everything up. So you got to learn. We got to grow. So that's the camera. Yes, you're having a wonderful evening. That is awesome. Absolutely awesome. I am glad that you are. Now let me see what this guy behind me is doing. What are you doing? You are chewing on something you shouldn't be. Alrighty. This is your towel. You're going to be sad when this towel is gone. And actually, this is not even yours. Okay, stand. Take. That's not even yours. That's your brother's. But, what is it about dogs being like kids? Whatever their sibling has is what they want. Oh, it applies to both. Applies to both. Yes, she is. Yes, she is. And I'm glad she's doing better too. Now, for those of you who are regulars, Valerie with Valerie Reese, it's all about the adventure, has had some sinus surgery, and it sounds awful. And if you want to know about that, go over to her channel. She's a lovely, lovely person, but she's a member of the Be Bodacious community. So keep her in your thoughts and prayers. She is still recovering. I don't know how she did that. Oh, the whole idea of sinus surgery up here. So, yeah. But Valerie is not disabled, but right now she has that challenge to overcome. So for me, the big thing about having the disability was accepting it. I've got a couple of different things going on. The reason I have Sir Fluffy, this service dog, is because I need help with mobility. A couple of you all have asked, why do I need a mobility service dog? And I'm going to show you in just a second. And service dog Pipsy, who may be coming in, barging in and out, he is also my service dog, and he does medical alerts. He did do disability until a couple of years ago. We realized that he had a hip and patella issue, and so that was it. Tested negative on the genetics testing, but sometimes these still happen. So pulled him immediately from mobility assistance, but he has this incredible nose for blood sugar alerts and seizure alerts. Now, this guy is amazing. He was actually letting me know that I had seizure activity that I didn't know I was having. I hadn't had a seizure in years. And then a couple of years ago, at Christmas, I started not really feeling that great and just was really scattered, headachy, and so forth. and he kept alerting, and I couldn't get him to stop. So I thought, okay, you know, we got a training issue here. So I said, I am good. Hi, Sir Fluffy. So I said, we got a training issue here, and after Christmas, I am going to contact his service dog program, which is the same one you came from, right? So before that happened, I had to, thanks, Spider-Man the hero. Looky there. I'm not going to do that. That is not part of Service Dog Life. So before I could contact the program, that first couple, because they were out for Christmas break, right, until the middle of January. And I had my annual checkup with my neurologist just a couple of days into the new year. And she was like, how are you doing? You know, what are you doing? All that kind of thing. And I told her that I'd been doing great, except I had been real scattered. I'd had some headaches and all that stuff. But it was Christmas. That's going to happen, right? Because it's Christmas. Well, she's watching me and she's watching Pipsy, and she looks at me and she says, how has your dog been? And she's got a real interest in service dogs. And I was like, oh, he is driving me crazy. I think I have got a problem with his training. He does these seizures, and so that's what it is. Well, she was looking at me just really oddly throughout the whole conversation, and she goes, and then she looks at me and says, did your service dog program tell you to trust your dog? I was like, yes, of course yeah, why? And she told me that she thought I was having some clinical seizure activity, and the best thing that I could do was take my medicines at an increased level. So she wrote for the stronger medicines. About 6 weeks, 8 weeks later, I start feeling a lot better, and the dog quit alerting. So that tells me that he was picking up on what was going on before I did. So, hey, what are you doing? Sorry, chewing on his towel. So part of dealing with all of the disabilities for me was learning how to integrate them, you know, which was a pain. It was a problem. So I like to travel. So my question was, you know, if you're talking about disability life, how do you work your disability or disabilities into a love of travel? Because you want to live without limits, but you've got to live with limits. That's just how it is. And, you know, here I am, a lifestyle YouTuber over 50. So life looks a little different in each decade than it did the decade before, right? You know, we're not in our prime for as long as we want to be. We're an adult longer than we're a kid. We're out of our prime years longer than we are in them. That's just how life goes. What do you all think? Do you agree? You know, let me know. Do you agree? Do you disagree? So that's just the whole lifestyle over 50 thing. You know, you've got to factor that in. And, you know, with that comes some growing challenges. You know, Todd over here says that, you know, decades of discomfort is a great motivator. And I agree. I agree, because it really, that discomfort pushes you, what is this, to do better, to live your life more strongly. What? Sorry about that, y'all. You know, to be better, to push your life, to live life more strongly. And so you got to figure out, what does that look like for you? So I want to go back to my love of travel and one of my disabilities, because people have asked me several times, how is it that you have a mobility disability? Well, I have foot drop. It started on, it was just a disc that was ruptured. I was waiting for surgery. And like everything happens with me at Christmas. So like on a New Year's Eve night, I'm having to have surgery because my right foot quit working. Instead of making the step, it was just kind of hanging there. So I was like having to step way up high and put my foot down. I was off balance and all this stuff was going on. So I called the doctor first thing Monday morning because it started on a weekend. Because have y'all ever noticed that like everything bad happens on a weekend? It does with me anyway. So I called him Monday morning, worked my way up the food chain, and then the doctor calls me back that afternoon and he says, "How far are you from the hospital?" And I go, I was like, "Well, not real close, about an hour, a little over." "Okay, I will meet you in the emergency room." So that automatically tells you that something is wrong, right? So prior to that Friday, I was walking fine. I was up, no problems. Then I got there and I had surgery, was told I had foot drop. And then they said, here's the thing, the doctor said, we'll operate and we'll see how much functioning you can get back. The flip side of that was the implication that I wasn't going to get functioning back because they just said they would try. And let me tell you, that is a sobering moment. A lot of people that have a disability life have that moment. And some of us do not, but I did. So I'm like, okay, whatever life looks like from that point forward, I'm going to be glad for. And I'm going to integrate it. So left the hospital on the walker, stepped down from the walker. Oh, and I had to use a wheelchair too. So wheelchair some, walker. I was able to then, with help from physical therapy, to be able to step down and use a cane. Then I was able to be without a cane for a while. So what happened was I kept falling, right? These things just come up. But one day I was coming out of my house and I had left my service dog. I had a service dog at this time. I had left my service dog inside the house because I was going to a meeting and I thought it's going to be quicker to just get in and out. Plus it was raining. And if I go somewhere, if he's in and out of the car, then I was taking a wet dog in because it was literally pouring. But before I even got out to the car, what happened? I took this major tumble, tore up my shoulder, had to have surgery on my shoulder, twisted my knee, broke my ankle. It's like, really? And so then all of this, my husband's calling saying, "You're late." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he's like, "I need the papers you've got." And I'm like, "Well, I just sprained my ankle." And he's like, "Okay, when are you coming with the papers?" And I'm like, "I just sprained my ankle." It didn't even click. So then when I got to the meeting, which I did make it to, I was about 8 minutes late. And when I got to the meeting, we had the meeting this whole time, right? My foot is swelling. So, by the end of the meeting, my foot is swollen so much that it's like literally over the top of my shoe. It was like the freakiest thing ever. And we're like, okay, well, we're going to go to the ER. And that's when we found out that I had broken my ankle. Not horribly, no surgery on that. But I kept having problems out of my shoulder. And then my ankle was healed up. I got off the crutches. Everything's great. And I'm still having problems with my shoulder. And this whole time, I'm like, okay, I pulled something and it's just strained. I know. And my daughter, I'm talking to her and she says, "Mom, if your ankle has healed and your knee is healed, shouldn't your shoulder have healed?" So I went back to the doctor, and then that's where the tech came in, or TA rather came in, and she said, "We have seen worse, but," I know, hello. So yeah, After that, they put me in a leg brace, and this has made tons of difference. So every day I get up and I put this thing on. The brace fits in my shoes. It's got the strap across the top of my shoe. It's got the extra ankle support because since breaking it, I have a weak ankle, even like a couple of years later. That's the over 50 thing, by the way. So every day I get up, I put this on, I strap it in, and then I go, And my seizures, they're just, part of chronic illness when you have a disability. So, so when you have a challenge, how do you live? What do you do? So we'll talk about how I integrate it, and we'll get to that in just a second. Let me get into Todd's comments. Dallas Cowboys fan, they drafted a great player from Notre Dame, Jalen Smith. Early in his promising career, he developed foot drop. He was never really able to be the same player again. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And that makes complete sense to me because with foot drop, not only do you have good days and bad days, but you don't have control over your foot anymore like you did before. Hopefully he's doing really good with the foot drop. Some people do just fine and they can get up and walk every day without a brace. Some people, don't. And life is on a continuum, when these things go on. So I'm sorry that he had that happen, but I think it really also illustrates how life can flip on a dime, and you go from being perfectly fine to having a disability. With me, my seizures, we weren't really shocked because I had a head injury, and so head injury and seizures go together. But I also have asthma, and I have to integrate that. For those of you who know, I used to go around in a converted van, right? 10 laps on the Alaska highway, 10 legs, 5 round trips on the Alaska highway, in a converted van, hauling stuff for mission trips. And boom, I wrecked the van last year because there's a large truck coming toward me, and it let out this giant plume of black smoke. We've had, ever since Hurricane Helene came in, we've had a lot of work trucks come in. This was just one of those. I have asthma, so boom, I started having an asthma attack before I can even reach onto the console there to get my inhaler. I'm off the road. So totaled that. It's just one of those things, though. Let's see here. Spider-Man the Hero says, yeah, I have knees that hurt when it's cold. Yep. But you don't let your knees bother you too much. You're still out scaling buildings, right, with your webs? So, obviously playing off of his name, Spider-Man the Hero there. But when I was first told that I had the leg disability, the foot drop, I was like, because I had that moment in the ER where I came to terms very, very quickly with however it looks, and I'll be glad for it. So my next challenge was getting through the next little bit and learning how to integrate it, because it took me about 5 months for my foot to relearn how to take that stepping motion again and really walk on it. 5 months of no driving. So there is one thing that we did while I was down for that 5 months. I needed a new engine in my car. So if you're going to have the engine replaced in your car, this is not something that companies do very, very quickly. So if it's going to be down for a while, and if you're going to be down for a while, why not do something to take the car down for a while and go ahead and have that replaced engine put in, a rebuilt engine put in? So at least I'm not sitting there staring every day at the PT Cruiser. which I had forever. I put 430,000 miles on it. I did pretty good. But, staring at that would have driven me crazy. So we were able to make the arrangements to go have that engine put in and replace other parts. If you take it off, you may as well put it on with a new one. So anyway, we had that gone. But during that whole 5 months, I could not drive because I couldn't control my foot. Flash forward, you come through that, and then, you start falling, and then you get the leg brace, which goes underneath your foot. So guess what? I had to give up my license for a little while until I learned how to navigate with that. And granted, it was only a couple of weeks, but I like to go. I do not like to stay home, as you all know, right? So, okay, I really wanted to go to Alaska. Our church was having a mission trip coming up. I really wanted to go. But then I was like, how can I go to Alaska and I have all of this going on, right? So I was looking at my life and I'm like, what do I need? I already had a service dog. And how do I do this? So I wanted a van. So when I got over the foot drop where I could really control my leg, we went out looking and we got this used Chevy Express. And we're talking about how do we make this into the converted van camper? What does that look like for me? What do I need? Because the nice thing about doing the build from scratch by yourself is that you can get anything you want at that point. Because it's all DIY. It's what you're doing. You're building it part by part. My thing was never had a bed. And I really didn't know what elements that I wanted, except I knew I was going to have a bed because I'm going to be spending the night in the thing. So, you go through all of that process. And I think that life in general, and you all who are listening, tell me what you think. But I think life in general is a lot like that. You have your challenge, and then you look at it objectively, and you look at it from the standpoint of what do I need and how do I learn from this so I can be a success. And I really feel like that's the difference between someone who can go live life fully versus someone who lets that limitation stand. Now, I'm not saying don't grieve. You've got to grieve for what you've lost, okay? Life is not going to be the same, and you have to come to terms with that, and you have to grieve. And a lot of people, that's why they're a therapist. They exist for problems like this. If people wouldn't need them, there wouldn't be anybody. So if you feel like you need therapy, go to therapy. It's all about living your life better. Eggman Rocks, hi and welcome. Let's see what we got here. I guess like me when it comes to flying. Say a little bit more about that. What does that mean? What does that mean when it comes to flying? I'd like to for you expand on that just a little bit. Is it a fear of heights, or do you have problems flying your airplane? Yeah. Inquiring minds want to know. So I really feel like it's a matter of integration and acceptance. But I think the acceptance has to come first. You can't deal with something that is always sitting there as the elephant in the room. If it's something that you're always avoiding, then the stress and everything about that gets bigger, or at least it does for me. And if I can face it head on, then life is better on lots of levels. Um, you know, and I've had a lot of weird things that have happened in my life, and that's just the way it is. We all have our moments. Every one of us has our moments where things are going to happen, and that's how it goes, right? So with me, I knew I wanted to travel. I knew I wanted to go to Alaska. I knew I wanted to do it in a van camper, but the question came up, how can I do it safely? And I had the service dog, not Sir Fluffy. The service dog that I had at the time was Tomlin. Great, awesome dog. He was a husky mix. He was large, and he was lovable. But oh my goodness, could he generate the fluff? Huskies are fluff bunnies. Their fluff is the gift that keeps on giving. So I had this guy, and it was great, but it was like, okay, so I'm going to do the van, and instead of leaving him behind, which is what I would thought that we could do, I could leave him. I could either board him or get a sitter, which is what we had talked about. But after the foot drop, there was not any little, it was just not, there was no getting around it. I had to have him. So it became, could I take him into Canada? What would that look like? And so forth, as we're trying to figure out the van. So it was a little bit stressful. Building the van was fun. It was just fun. We actually did that several times because that's what you do when you have a van camper, right? Because it's building it out multiple times as part of your journey. It's learning who you are. It's learning what you want. And for me, this van just kind of symbolized all of life, because life is a matter of figuring out what you need, what you want, right? So you can go live how you're supposed to. Let's see. Eggman Rock says, I need to fly to see the world. Not necessarily. Now, there's a lot of it. But, we still have transatlantic ship crossings. We still have ships that go, across like the Cape of South Africa. We have people who have gone from the North Pole in Alaska all the way down to the tip of South America. So you may not have to fly as much as you think so. But the question is, what do you want to give up for that? And like with me, I knew I could either drive and see everything, or I knew I could fly. For me, driving was the answer, because with the van camper, I could drive until I get tired, find a Walmart, a Cracker Barrel, a Target, a Sam's Club, and park it for a while, or a truck stop, or a rest area, park it for a while, nap, get back in the driver's seat, and get back on the road. So if I wasn't feeling good, it was real easy to take care of myself. Easier, I think, than it would have been if I was flying to the different places. But if you have the van, then you the flip side is have to kind of give up, or not really give up, but you have to put that on hold for flying. So, it's a matter of, it's cost. It's what do you really want to do? It's, like, how do you do it? And so I'm really good at looking at the big picture and saying, okay, this is what I want to do. This is my challenge. What do I need to do to overcome the challenge and get things done the way I want to do them? Because staying home for me is not an option. I don't like doing that. So it's a matter of looking at it objectively. And sometimes it's really hard to do that. So you take yourself out of the equation. And what I mean by that is you look at what I just said, you know, your goal and what you need to get there. But put yourself out of it and say, okay, I'm writing this down. If this was my best friend, what would I tell her or him? And how could I help my best friend achieve what's on this piece of paper? Forget about you. Forget about anything else. Don't look at all the things you can't do. Look at what you can do and approach that from the standpoint of you being your own best friend. And what does that advice look like? And write all of it down. No matter how far fetched it sounds, write it down. Then go through and look at it and take your pen or your pencil and underline everything that is realistic for your friend to do. You now have a roadmap. Okay. So then what's the next hurdle? You know, I'm going to pick on, let's just say I'm planning a trip to, what's a good trip to take? You all tell me. Somebody just give me an answer. What would be a good trip? If I could go anywhere. If you could go anywhere, where would it be? How about Walt Disney World? Let's go with Walt Disney World. Okay. So let's say I'm my best friend and I want to go to Walt Disney World. So at the top of my random sheet of paper, I'm going to put go Walt Disney World. Boom. Next part of it, what's my challenge? Well, I don't walk well. I have to have a service dog. I have to make sure I have my meds because I have asthma. I have to make sure I have my meds because I have seizures. If I have a seizure, I'm going to need to make sure I have communication. So, you know, brief look, what are the challenges, right? And then look at what you need to do to realistically overcome those challenges, which might be money. That can be a challenge that everybody's going to have if they go to Walt Disney World. Deciding how you're going to get there is another challenge everybody has when they go to Walt Disney World. Deciding if you want to get the dining plan or not. Everybody has those challenges, right? So it's really nice to look at it and say, okay, everybody's got to figure this part out. And having a common challenge for me is helpful to reminding me of what life can be like. So then go through and put down challenge 1, funds. How are you going to pay for your trip? And then just jot that out. Are you going to save? Are you going to just take your paycheck and go? Are you going to finance it? Jot it down. Transportation, what do you want to do? Rental car? No rental car. Do you want to fly? Do you want to drive? Jot that down. Okay? And I guess you could say when you want to go is another challenge because you've got to pick out the season. And if you have a disability, you kind of have to pick out that season a little bit more carefully. For example, when I had my adrenal gland tumor, I got overheated easily. So that meant don't go during the summer. Yeah. So you're going to write all that down and then you work on your individual challenges. So seizure disorder. We'll start there. I need good communication. I need to be able to get in touch with my husband or a family member at all times. Okay. I also need to make sure that somebody is around that can call 911 for me. Disney World, that's really great because there's tons of staff. Hey, thank you, Todd. Thank you very much for coming in. I appreciate it. You have a wonderful rest of your evening too. Thank you. So Disney World is wonderful because they have lots of staff and they'll get you some help. They'll call 911. They've got people who will come out, that whole thing. I don't know why I'm losing my hat today. Anyhow, communications. What can my cell phone do for me? This is a tool, okay? It's a very personal tool, but it's still a tool. So what can my cell phone do for me? Safety, safety, safety. It's got all kinds of safety features. So I have them set. So if I need to get in touch with a family member on a moment's notice, I just hit the button on the side, the off button, a certain number of times. You know, it'll go ahead, it'll call people, it'll give them my GPS location and all that jazz. Little recordings of what's going on, 6-second clips, you know, things like that. Let them know by text and whatnot. So I've got that. It's a wonderful setting. If you all want to do a video on that or a live stream about how to set the settings, I'll be glad to talk to you about that more. I have my crash detection set. So like when I wrecked the van, I didn't wreck it because of a seizure, but because I had my crash detection set, my phone said that there had been a crash detected and did I need assistance? And I forget exactly what it said, but it went ahead and text messaged my husband so he could figure things out, and he got my GPS coordinates, the clips, and the whole 9 yards, right? So those things are great for trips. I did that for driving to Alaska. It was having those features was just great. The other thing is, you know, next I have asthma. So what's my plan? If I go to Walt Disney World and I have an asthma attack, what am I going to do? Keep my inhaler in my pocket. If the inhaler doesn't work, what's the next plan? And I always go, before I travel, I always go see my doctor first, and we make the plan out. It's just part of how do you do, hello, it's just part of how do you live your life. Hey, hi, Nicole, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So dive on into the chat with comments and questions anytime you want. This is Sir Fluffy. He's my service dog. He's a Bernese mountain dog. Yes, you're great. So we're talking about a trip to Walt Disney World, this pretend trip, and how do you do that in light of your disabilities? Ooh. And we talked about seizures, we talked about asthma, we talked about having safety settings set on your cell phone, and talked about transportation. If you have seizures, you may not want to drive at a place like this. If you're anxious about driving, you may not want to be in a place like this. So how do you get there? You know, and if you fly, you take your transportation from the airport to the parks and take your park transportation while you're at Walt Disney World. And you can do Ubers, you can do the mini cars. They have the polka dots on them. They're so cute. You can take those and get around. And then when your time is completed at Walt Disney World, you take the transportation back to the airport. Let's say you want to go to Denali National Park in Alaska. That sounds daunting, right, for a lot of people, but it's not really that bad. If you like to fly, you go to the airport, you put your feet on the plane. You may make a stop or two, but you take your feet off the plane once you get to Anchorage, right? Then you take the train from Anchorage to Denali Park Village, and then you can take your transportation. They have shuttle buses that run all the time, and you can take them and go to the national park. When you're finished, you just do the whole thing in reverse. So those are some options, right? There's always options. Now, I know that some people are going to be so sick, you know, end-stage cancer, end-stage renal. So this doesn't apply to absolutely everyone. But I think these are things that apply to most people. And then, of course, with me, where I have the mobility challenge, that's why I have Sir Fluffy here. That's why I have my service dog. Service dog life has got its ups and downs. Anytime I go somewhere with him, I'm advertising, hey, I have a disability, the whole disability life, disability awareness things going on anytime I'm around him, but anytime I'm around places with him. But without him, I couldn't do what I want to do. So thinking about him when I'm looking at a trip to Walt Disney World, that, pretend trip we're talking about here, they have kennels. They have this whole like best friends dog boarding thing. So if I get down there and it's so hot that he's potentially going to be sick, I can board him. So there's tons and tons of options. I have him on a Banfield wellness plan because wherever I go, pretty much there's a Banfield. So anyway, so if you're dealing with chronic illness, I hope this is helpful. If you have your own, if you have a disability, you've got your own disability journey going on. So share that with me down in the comments if you feel comfortable as far as, what does that mean for you? And put your best tips forward. Toss them down there, okay? So thank you all for watching. I hope you have a great evening. Have a great weekend. My name is Gayle. You're always welcome here at Be Bodacious. So subscribe to follow us for more travel, lifestyle, and service dog videos and honest discussions about chronic illness and, living your life. So thank you all again. And I will see you Sunday at 7:30 right here on this channel and a couple of videos during the week.